in today's episode, I'm going to dive into the Wall Street article that was released on June 22nd, 2025 by Lauren Weber, where millions of job applications are not making it through the bots. And what's fascinating about this issue is we knew this was coming, and we're seeing somebody finally do something about it in a way that I think we can learn from, or at least begin to prepare ourselves, because this is not just something that is going to happen to one person or another like it's happening to everyone, and it's going to happen very quickly. This is your first time, by the way, joining me. Welcome to the Habit Chess podcast. My name is Misbah Hawk, and on this show I like to talk about training the strength and conditioning of skills. Also, you can learn new things faster. So anyways, let's dive into the article. So Derek Mobley is the name of the person that sued the software firm called Workday. Now, Workday is an interesting character in all of this because it's one of these ginormous companies that is used by tons and tons of recruiters. And so even if it is not a company like Workday, and we're talking about its competitor, we're talking about something like LinkedIn building in this type of an agent or bot that filters through job applications. All it would take is something like that with a very small amount of error to basically elicit some of the same things that are happening. So I'm not going after just Workday here. I just find it fascinating that they're the ones behind a lot of the recruiting software that big companies are using. Now, Derek Mobley is an IT professional in North Carolina, and he applied for 100 jobs during a stretch of unemployment from 2017 to 2019 and for a few years after. And so I think that date is pretty important to note. So 2017 to 2019, AI wasn't as hype. There wasn't as much awareness around it. You thought of it, you knew vaguely what it was, but it wasn't as general purpose of a technology as it has quickly become in these past few years. So that timeline is very important, I think, to acknowledge, because it would make sense that big companies were able to get away with this because there's nobody looking into it. There's nobody thinking about it. You're not really even, considering the effects of AI in use cases like this the way we are today. And we're having discussions about it because it's just more known to most people now. So one of the things that Derek was upset with, understandably, was getting rejected or being met with silence, and, this happening as quickly as like an hour sometimes, where it made him eventually question the statistical likelihood of, hey, I've sent out this many, there should be something here. And in fact, I'm seeing all of this stuff being very quickly rejected in a way that seems like it is not human. Another keynote is Mobley is now 50 years old. Notice that many of the companies he applied to using an online recruiting platform created by software firm Workday, the platforms called applicant tracking systems, help employers track and screen job candidates. Now, in 2023, that is the year when Mobley sued Workday, one of the largest purveyors of recruiting software, for discrimination, claiming its algorithm screened him out based on his age, race, and disabilities. Mobley, a Black graduate of Morehouse College who suffers from anxiety and depression, said the math didn't add up. And so, basically that's another important note. 2023 is when this lawsuit was filed. So remember, by that point, now we're pretty aware of AI. We understand ChatGPT, and we are beginning to see, this is going to change things. This is going to change jobs, the economy, and the future of work. And that was something that even if we couldn't all explain it, we all could see, whether it was a couple years away, 10, 20 years away, or 10 months away, it felt closer than it ever has before. Now, the reason that this is so scary is that it's not just about the specifics of this. Do you have anxiety and depression, or, what is your race, and are you being singled out based off of those things? The scary part is that you can be singled out for any factor, and not just a factor that you have provided, but things that could be found out about you. And this is the scary part of the power of this technology, is that it's not basically screening just the information that's coming in. There will be, if it isn't happening already, there will be a time where it's going to go crawl all of the public stuff that you have on the internet, all of your social profiles, every post that you've ever posted, and it will try to scrape data based off of those things. And that is creepy, right? Because it could make weird connections. It could maybe somebody else who has the same name as you. It could pick up that person's data. And there's all these tiny little error points that could actually be catastrophic, right? It can actually affect the trajectory of somebody's life and their livelihood. One of the scenarios I was thinking about is what happens when a company like Workday teams up with, one of the biggest data providers that has all of this crazy information on every single person in the world, and it is able to match up into that database. So it's not just considering the criteria of, hey, this was your LinkedIn resume, this is maybe your LinkedIn profile, which we know we can crawl that because you gave that to us. But it's like, no, maybe it can go find Instagram, right? Because of your email, it can get all this data that your email is connected to. And you don't know if that is actually being taken into consideration and if there are things that are disqualifying you before a human even gets to see it. A federal judge in California said Mobley's age discrimination claim could proceed for now as a collective action. The ruling opens the door to millions of potential claims from job seekers over the age of 40. So here is what's so insane about this. Now, if you think about how AI is allowing things to scale very quickly, decisions to be scaled quickly, thinking and actions to be scaled quickly, and in this case, it's allowing you to screen probably thousands of applicants very, very quickly. And so it is no longer just that, hey, there's one person affected by this. There could be, and there probably are, millions of people affected by this. And so it kind of shows you, as many of these other lawsuits that are out there regarding AI right now, it shows you what is to come, right? Because we're in this unregulated territory right now, and it's a preview for, okay, what are the safeguards that are going to be put up? Or when vulnerable populations are affected by this, does anything happen, right? Or is it just kind of like cybersecurity where it's like, oh, contact internet crimes, and it just gets sent off into the ether and hopefully it gets dealt with, and probably it doesn't. So this is a huge moment in history because we're getting to see the first forms of the downsides that AI is having, to the degree where there is legal stuff that's actually going on because of it. And so notice how Workday, I'm sure, is happy that they've created a tool that can scale profits so quickly and with such low margins maybe, but at the same time, look at what it can also do. It can scale problems just as quickly, okay? Because you don't just have now one lawsuit or one person that's being affected. This is now something that is thousands of people are going to pile into. And what does that mean, right? What does that mean for the future of a company like Workday, and also for the future of other applicant tracking and screening systems? So a couple takeaways from this. Number one is the fact that the third door becomes more important. So it's a book by Alex Banayan where not getting opportunities from the front door or the back door, like a job posting on LinkedIn or Indeed, but being able to go directly to the source, right? You have a relationship with the person in HR, or the founder or the CEO, and you have a shot of getting your resume looked at. Now, there's been periods throughout history where this was very common, right? This is how things work. This is where that saying comes from, like your network is your net worth. It was a little superficial, but I think what's happening now with the introduction of AI being this other, right? There's this other that is not just a human, and it allows humans temporarily kind of forget some of their differences and focus on this other that is actually a big threat, right? It is a help, of course, but it also is a threat in this scenario. And people have enormous empathy for job loss and job security because in most modern parts of the world, that's what keeps things ticking. Everything is predicated on, do you have access to these opportunities? And everything, especially for example in the US, can degrade very quickly the second that that's taken away from you. And we've seen what can happen when there are, recessions and mass layoffs and, things where there's a total crash for everybody all at once. And that's a very helpless time, right? When we are deep in it. And so this to me gave a preview of like, okay, just because this is affecting people over the age of 40 right now, doesn't mean that, we all are safe if you're under 40. Like, it's a matter of time where this becomes a piece of the process that is just normal, right, through it all. And so it leads me to the next part, which is preparing for this game, being able to prepare for what the algorithm, what the agent wants. Another thing I think is going to be, if there are legal troubles that arise out of this, you will see companies less likely to actually let it run on autopilot. So this is an example of where you can't fully trust yet something like a Workday to just run this automatically with no human interference. If you do have a human that can kind of autocorrect the 0.5%, 1%, however much percent of error you actually have, that would be a different story, right? But that's not true. It's kind of like we're trusting that, hey, you'll figure it out, you're 99% correct, and we're just kind of letting it do its thing. And that's all fine and good until there's lawsuits and until there are legal troubles. And that just makes everybody kind of rethink things, right? So I wanted to bring this story to your attention because I think it poses a major predicament for everybody, but also I think that it's inspiring that we've seen this so early on. It didn't have to be maybe tens of millions of people losing their jobs or not able to get jobs because they are being affected by this screener. I will say the good news, Mobley has since gotten hired and twice promoted at Allstate. So that was some good news that made me happy to hear that Derek is doing well. But nonetheless, I am really inspired and I'm really curious. Honestly, I don't have all the answers of like where this is going to go, but I'm curious from you. What do you think this means for the future of work? How do you think that we can begin to navigate these waters where you have softwares like Workday and applicant tracking and screening systems that are now just going to be a regular piece of the process? I hope this was useful. I'm going to be tracking this as there are developments, as there are major changes. You will see me cover this on another episode, but I wanted to bring it to your radar so that you can begin to converse around this, whether it's with me, whether it is with people that you know. I'm really curious where your thoughts are at on this. But again, I appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you on the next one.